Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our wonderful podcast, I Am Landscape Growth. Today, I have the honor and privilege of bringing Chris Scheer from Father Nature Tacoma on the show. Thank you, Chris, for doing this.
You're welcome, Rob. It's my pleasure.
We've had the opportunity to work with Chris over the last, maybe 13, 14 months. It's been an absolute joy. So maybe for the sake of the audience, you can give people a bit of a rundown of kind of what you're up to today and like kind of how you got there, where you came from to get you to the role you're in right now.
Okay. Man, that's kind of long-winded, so feel free to cut me off or
No, it's
help
all
me
good. We got a bit of time. Context is king, right, for these folks.
Yeah, so I am not the majority owner of Father Nature Landscapes Tacoma. I have a business partner. His name's Andrew. And I was getting my degree at the University of Washington back in 2006. And I met Andrew at an event at church. It was called Men's Life. And we got paired up in this big group of about 10 guys. And as men often do, you're kind of going around feeling each other out and like, well, what do you do? What do you do? And Andrew mentioned what he did. He owned a landscape business. He had just started it in Tacoma. He'd moved from Birmingham. And he and I immediately connected. And I was able to get his information, like his phone number, and then just told him, hey, man, I'm always looking for part-time work. Would you have any interest in letting me come on and help your crew or something? And he said yes. And so I was able to join. I think it was his first project he sold. And I met up there one day and he put me to work. And I mean, I started at the bottom. So I was a laborer on the crew part-time while I was getting my degree. And then as things progressed, over the course of about 2 years, I kind of worked my way through the ranks, so to speak. At one point, he found out I liked and had an interest in carpentry. And so then I started doing wood projects for us, like small decks and
Pergolas, gazebos, that type of thing.
yeah, exactly. And then as I finished my degree, which was in accounting, I also helped him with the book. So I ran payroll and I kind of became an office person, especially as I got an internship, which was taking more of my time. I really couldn't make it work well to be out in the field and then also go to classes and do his book. So that's kind of how I progressed through the landscaping business. And then for about 10 months, I took a job in accounting and he was still running Father Nature. And I sucked. I was a terrible, terrible accountant. I I liked the people that I was in office with, but the grind of sitting at a desk in a cubicle, which it literally was for me on this huge floor. I had no interactions with clients. I had very little interactions with other staff. I was just given numbers to kind of crunch through on spreadsheets and do tax returns. It really
sounds amazing.
God bless accountants, Rob. But I wanted to throw myself off the sixth floor most days and just end it all. And anyway, I joke all the time. The managing partner brought me in one day and sat me down across the big desk from him and said, Chris, we got to chat. And I felt I knew what was coming. And he just said, look, you're not very good at this. I do believe.
You're like, I know.
And he's like, I believe we could put you on a plan of improvement. I'm sure you would show improvement. But I got to ask you, is this really what you want to do is this what you want to do for the next 30 years? And I had this moment of like good cop, bad cop, the devil on my shoulder, all that. And the words just tumbled out immediately. And I said, no, I really don't like it. And Bob was his name. And he was so gracious. He said, look, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to pay you 2 months severance. Go to your desk right now. write a letter of resignation, take it to HR. You can clean your desk out as fast or slow as you want, and this will be your last day. And I was like, stood up, shook his hand. There was no hard feelings. I went to my desk. I did that. I left. Um, and before I called my wife, who was pregnant with our first child, to tell her I just lost
Perfect.
my job, I called Andrew, and
Yeah,
this was a
I
Friday.
gotta get my shit covered before I call
Yeah,
my wife.
this was like Friday at 2 in the afternoon or something. And I said, "Hey, Andrew, I can be back to work on Monday. I really want to make a go of this with you." And he was like, "Oh, heck yeah, man, let's hit
Alabama,
it.
baby, let's go.
Alabama, roll tide." And so I got back with him on Monday and got to work. And then he and his wife had their first daughter later that year. And in doing so, they realized they didn't want to be the 2,000-ish miles from home. So they decided to move back to Birmingham. And in doing that, Andrew said, "Why don't you take over the business, and I'll give you an equity ladder and you'll earn up to this percentage of the business, and it'll take this long. And what do you think?" And I said, "Yes." Um, and so that's how I became an owner in Father Nature. And it's good and bad in that I've done everything in this business and helped grow it from when I took over in 2009. We were grossing about 280,000.
Mm.
And so in being that small, it was me and a three-man crew. I mean, I sold the work, I managed the work, I ordered
Invoice
it,
the work,
I
collected
invoiced,
receivables,
ran payroll, I was the receptionist, I did all of it, right?
purchasing.
Yeah, I did clean the toilet, all that kind of stuff, the janitor. And I've been blessed in that I've realized along the way I have some skills, but I was never a trained landscape professional. I don't have a horticulture degree or a design. And so I paired myself as I found people who were really good, whether it was a sub or not, I really glommed onto them, and just told them the truth and said, "This is not my area of expertise, it's yours. But I'd like to leverage your talents for the better of my customers and my business." And they all agreed. And in doing that, more and more people began to join Father Nature, and we started growing. And we've been able to get it up to, I think we're just shy of 30 people right now. Um, and
Epic.
it's been a heck of a ride, and I have quite a few plans for it to keep going. So it's been fantastic.
I love it, and thank you so much for giving the context. Right, I think there's a lot too for people that are starting out their careers. You don't have to know exactly what you want. You just got to go start trying stuff out, even if you
Yeah,
hate it, and then you find the contrast that leads you in the right direction. So I think that's a really cool story on a lot of levels, Chris. So thanks for sharing. So
you're welcome.
one of the things um, I wanted to ask you about. So first and foremost, the podcast is designed to help landscape entrepreneurs grow faster, better, stronger. And in doing so, working with folks like you and the best in the business, understanding what the constraints are to growth in the industry. And so, quick summary: what's the focus of Father Nature in terms of a landscape business?
Our goal is to connect life and land. And that might sound hokey, but we want people, our clients, to utilize these spaces we're building for them and to create memories with their family and friends and sometimes coworkers, and get out and live outside.
It's awesome and purpose-driven business nonetheless. Focused on residential, mostly design build,
Yes.
and creating these epic spaces. I think in one of the pieces too, we talked about how you really love to focus on creating outdoor experiences that engage the five senses, and
Yep.
really stop the epidemic of kids glued to screens. I don't think that that's exactly what you say, but it's pretty much the essence of how you guys work,
I would agree. 100%.
which is amazing from our perspective because it helps us distinguish you from somebody else.
Yeah, we're not the company you call if you just want a driveway or a backyard patio and that's it. We're, to your point, more the company you call if you're looking to have different areas of your backyard that serve different purposes, and you want to get 20, 30 people in the space on a regular basis, and you want to cook out there, and you want a congregating area around a fire pit, and you want to have the water feature rolling in the background to create the soft breakup of all the sound from the neighborhood and things like that. That's really what we do.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. And so when it comes to what's holding people back right now, like where do you see growth constraints in the industry currently?
In our business, it's probably me. Um, a willingness to, like, we grew in kind of the height of the pandemic. I think I was just shy of 50 employees total. So we like, it's 20 more ish than what we have right now. In running my numbers, I gotta be honest with the audience. I was always really good at building landscapes and working with people. I have not always been diligent about running the business by the numbers and actually diving deep into them and understanding what's my gross margin, what's my net, what's our cash flow position, and different ratios. And we have really, in the last about 2, 3 years, kind of try and job costing, the big one too, looking at running the business as an actual business and not afraid to make a profit. And if my employees and staff or clients don't like that, then they're not a good fit for us because we need to make some money at the end of the day. The stuff we do is too risky and too darn cool for this business to not make a decent margin, and be able to give something back.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I mean, so first and foremost, very few leaders have the wherewithal to look inward as the major growth constraint. I think you nailed it on the head. As leaders, we're the ones that set the pace for an organization or bottleneck it.
Yeah.
And I just think, I really appreciate your perspective there. And I think a lot of people, that might resonate. But maybe you can just walk us through that transition from, you know, a business, like a love affair, if you will, of
Yeah.
making awesome stuff for really cool people, working with great staff, to making an operational organization that's designed to not only do that great work for great people with awesome staff, but to also turn a profit.
Yeah.
What did that transition look like? And what are some of the, lessons you learned in
Yeah, that's
that
an easy one.
journey?
I've got Andrew, my business partner, who runs Father Nature Birmingham in my ear. And for years, like he is the one who found LMN, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. Had it for about a year before we adopted it here in Tacoma. Before that, we were just doing like square foot pricing through QuickBooks,
Right.
having no idea if I was going to make a profit on a job because I never planned for it. Didn't know if I was recovering overhead because I didn't plan for
Weren't
it.
even thinking about it.
No, it was just like, I don't know, how about 20 bucks a foot? And we ran some numbers, but like it just made no sense. And
It's a
looking
thousand
back,
square feet, $20,000. Let's go.
that's it. Let's do it. How long is that going to take? I don't know. That usually takes about a week and a half.
Yeah.
Um, and
How many
so
people do you need? I don't know, three, five, six, whatever.
that's right. And now with the utilization of LMN, it breaks down. We do our man hours. We know what equipment's going, what materials, and so it's easier to schedule the projects. There's an accountability to it as well because we just post the hours and we talk about it constantly around here. And our
So
job
you're kind of
costing,
raising the acumen too, like the business acumen of everybody in the organization.
yeah, trying really hard, and it's been a bit of an uphill challenge because I have some staff that's been here with me. I have my brother has been with the business since 2008.
Right.
And then I've got a couple other guys that have been here over 10 years and they're real leaders, but they still remember kind of the run and gun, how we did it. And so they're the ones I had to really focus on and work on. Hey, you guys have to understand these man hours and how this works and translates into the completion of the job so that you can help be my leaders to all the rest of the staff so they understand why it's important and how we're going to measure success around here.
Okay, so then, yeah, walk us through that. I hear this a lot from entrepreneurs, all sorts of businesses, but legacy staff, good human beings, helped grow the company, maybe tied to the way we used to do things. Now we're moving in a new direction, and we got to bring them along the way. Is there any lessons you've learned in like how to approach those folks, or any mistakes you've made that you wouldn't do again, or something that worked really well?
That's a great question. I am a person who's very comfortable with change and it doesn't disrupt me. In fact, I like it.
You almost
I'm
embrace it.
Yes, and I think that's part of being an entrepreneur and the leader and the grower of the business. I'm willing to try something, run the numbers, realize not that didn't work, and completely throw it away and start fresh. And I've realized, especially as I had one designer leave a few years ago, she said the change in this building is too constant. It's all the time, and there's not a consistency going on. And her name was Lorene. I really took to heart what she had to say and said, man, we have to analyze things and make changes once or twice a year. We can't be flipping the script every month.
Go
Uh,
to a conference, come back. We're changing everything.
that's it. Like, hey, there's a better rat mousetrap out there. We're gonna take it and do it. And I realized, unless we were gonna go under because we're doing something, which we were never in jeopardy of, we have to be slower and more thoughtful in how we roll out change and then explain it and get the buy-in first,
Oh, dude, yes.
and almost like beta test it behind the scenes, and then let people know, hey, I have been doing this and it's working on this crew, because we run three install crews and one carpentry crew and then one maintenance. And so I've had the ability to kind of try some new things silently on one of those groups and then be able to convey to everybody else, like, this group is now hitting hours and doing this. Here's how we're going to do things moving forward. And the why behind it, I think, is important. Not just the go do it, it's the reason why we're going to do it.
Well, and I mean, I think you just touched on some like really key points there that I want to just kind of highlight quickly. One is there's
Yeah.
that saying, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
So that, and I heard this for years. Slow down to speed up,
Yep.
and I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
That's
Like,
so stupid.
I'm trying to do shit. How am I supposed to slow down?
Yeah.
But I think you captured it really well in that, like, okay, I'm gonna figure out what we need to do and why. I'm gonna go find some folks that'll help me test it and figure out how. Then I'm gonna figure out if it worked. And then once I've got that figured out, I'm gonna communicate why it matters to everybody and how we're gonna go moving forward. Like that
Yeah.
takes time to slow down to get everybody to move together faster.
It does. And I know for our staff, we employ a very high Hispanic contingent. It's probably 80-90% of my field staff is Hispanic. And there does need to be a level of how this is going to benefit them. And sometimes that's monetarily, other times it's researching different equipment that's going to make it easier on them and less physically exhausting, because it is a very hard industry.
No doubt. It is hard work.
It is taxing on you. You're in the sun, you're in the rain, you're in the cold, whatever. We're out there doing it, and so we have to help them understand why we're going to do it and make this change and how it's going to start to help them.
Tu español está bueno?
Says más o menos.
Nice. Okay, so actually, can you just touch on that quickly, though? A lot of folks are working with Hispanic workforces, and maybe the leaders don't have Spanish as a first language.
Yeah,
There's obviously cultural differences. There's cultural differences from the East Coast to the West Coast states, let alone different countries.
yeah,
Anything you've learned over the years that's like helped you really kind of bridge that gap?
yeah. I show a lot of interest. I would also say I went on almost a half dozen mission trips a long time ago to Mexico, and really, it sounds corny, but fell in love with the culture. And then when I got married, my wife and I took our honeymoon and our 5-year anniversary down to Mexico. So it's a place I really enjoy. It's being in Washington, it's not that far or hard to get down there.
Yeah,
Um, and so when I'm working with these guys, even if my Espanol is basura and their English is basura, if I ask a lot of questions, I'll pick up like a shovel in days past, and I would say, like, como se dice? How do you say this? And they look at you like, are you for real? My 3-year-old knows how to say that, but
you're like,
they
but help me out.
help me out, guys. And they tell me, and I really work hard. I either write it down or I try to like make a mnemonic memory type thing and I'll remember it. And then I'll use the name next time. And they start to see, like, man, Chris asks. And then he starts to use our language. And it's not just English. It's not like, hey, this is America, learn English. I try really hard at that. And that has, I think, helped me a lot with these guys to help them see me not just as the owner and the boss, but a guy that's trying to learn their stuff and meet them
That's cool.
halfway.
That's cool, man. Showing interest. I love that. All
Yep.
right. So um, tell us a bit. I mean, when we talked a bit when we were prepping about this, we were talking about growth, and one of the constraints which you've, with the humility of Chris Scheer mentioned that is the leader, but also you mentioned finding the right customers has been a big part of the success.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about like what you guys have done to find the right customer?
Well, we hired you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate
Yep.
that.
So that was a start, but we've seen for a while now the scope of our project over even the last 5 years has started to grow. And what I mean by that is there was a time, like when I took over back in '09, we were the people that would put in a front entryway and a couple plants and a little bit of drainage and some grass and get out of there. And it was like 2 days,
Bam,
three
bam. Thank
days.
you. You're done.
That's it. And then clients started seeing what we could do, and they would typically then they'll start to say, well, can you come look at this area of my yard? Or I was thinking about a roof structure to cover my deck. Is that something you do? Or hey, I mentioned the deck. Do you guys build decks? And it kind of started to snowball. And I really, really enjoy construction a lot. I read a lot of trade magazines, from decking to hardscape, to house building, all kinds of stuff. I just love learning tricks and new techniques. And in doing that, I wasn't afraid to take things on and say, yes, we can do that, whether that was through a subcontractor or me spending some time in a how to build it type book,
Yeah.
and then going out and doing it. And as we've done that, we've seen our projects go from like $10,000, $20,000 average budgets to well over $100,000. And that has become very, very common for us to have six-figure jobs. And I mean, I remember my first large job, back in 2010 was, I think, 62,000. And I could not believe this man said yes to doing this landscape and spending that kind of money on a landscape. And now those checks come in, those are progress payments for us sometimes. And it's just the scale has changed, you know, and the client's expectations have grown as well, because they're expecting us to be the experts. You know, when you think about it, we need to be slope experts, drainage experts,
Oh, you name it.
compaction. It's all over,
Material
plumbing.
experts.
Yeah. And that's what they expect of us. And we're pretty darn good at that at this point, knowing how to bring it all together.
So then what do you say to the people? Because one of the things we're talking about on stage all across Canada and the United States to landscapers across the industry is we gotta level up where your customer. We got to go after the
Yeah.
higher level, the higher value customer. And the reason
Yep.
we believe really strongly is that is because they're not impacted by interest rates. They don't really care about inflation. They
Oh, I
want
agree.
epic shit to do epic shit with.
And they have the money for it, period.
100%. So if we need to, leverage the level of client we're going after, but then as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then there's like this imposter syndrome that kind of, gets in people's heads, and they go,
Yeah. Fake it
you're.
till you make it.
So just can you talk a little bit about like how to
Well,
help someone get through that block?
yeah, we've tried a few things. Like there was a period of a year or two where we used to charge for us to come out and estimate your project. Um, and that kind of helped to qualify potential clients, because if they weren't willing to pay the fee, whether it was $10 or $50, they just went away, and we didn't worry about it. Um, and we have continued to evolve, and now we look at it as, we're not out there to estimate, we're out there to consult with clients. And I think our marketing and our branding has really moved more towards that. And then a business like yours that has helped us create these landing pages and things that the prospective client has to research and fill out. We asked some of the more difficult questions from the very first phone call, like, well, Rob, what is your budget? Oh, Chris, I don't know. I don't even know what this stuff costs. Okay, well, Rob, what if I told you most of our clients spend at least $70,000 on a landscape? Holy people spend that. No, no, no. I have like 4,000, because they'll tell you some number.
There is a
Um,
number.
there isn't. Everyone does. I've done home improvement projects around my house. I'm hoping the window project I'm getting the bid on is going to be under 10,000, or
Yeah.
the roof that I need is going to be under 30. I know a number. And so we've worked hard at just getting those numbers out. And when they don't align, we tell the client, we help to educate them and explain why the $4,000 is not nearly enough for the patio, the roof, the deck, and the outdoor kitchen that they wanted. Not even one of those components is only $4,000. And so after we've explained a few things to them, if that number hasn't jumped significantly, like to $40,000 or something, then we just tell them politely, we're not the company for them, and we don't feel bad about it. They might ask for a referral. We often don't have great, that's not true. Sometimes we have referrals, but I'm not in the business of referring
Well, no, you got to put your name
That
on
person,
somebody else's business, right?
yes. And so we just, hey, there's that amazing thing called Google, and you can find somebody else that way, just like you did us. But, you know, that's just not the kind of projects we focus on. If it's a get in and out and be done, that's not us. We're a bigger planning, slow it down company at this point.
So
And
that's a cool perspective right there about slowing down. But like, so let's say I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing $20,000 average jobs,
yep,
and someone comes to me and says, I got 120 grand, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Can you do it? And then in my mind, as the entrepreneur, been in business maybe 4 or 5 years, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know
right.
if we should take it on. I'm not sure if we can make this happen. And they're thinking maybe they shouldn't, maybe they should. What's your advice to those folks?
I think it, I've learned over the years, there's different types of entrepreneurs and business owners. There's people who have a business, but all they have is a job. They've created a job for themselves. There's no, it's not sellable. The business, it isn't. They are
It's
like,
dependent on them.
it is, it's 100% dependent on them. If they get sick or injured, it folds. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like they don't have any money in the account really until the client pays them. So then they can buy materials for the next project. If you're that, then I think what we're talking about won't even apply. If you're the other one, which I think is somebody that wants to build a business, and it doesn't have to be like we are 30 employees. Maybe you just want to have 5 to 10, but you don't want to be all dependent upon you all the time. You want to have some key staff. Then I think that's the kind of person I like to align with when I'm talking about business stuff, because that's where I find myself is I want to grow this thing honestly, so that I can take a passive income from it in the next 10 years and kind of hang out with my wife and my kids and play some golf and do some other things and not be tied daily to my business. Um, and so if that's you, to take on that $120,000 job when your average is 20, I think I would look at what kind of cash do I have? Um, what ability to pay things later do I have with my vendors? Have I set that up? Do I have terms essentially so I can take a job like that on? And then I would make sure I structure my contract with the client that I'm getting progress payments from them. So I'm not getting like 60 grand down and then waiting on the other 60 till I'm completed. I would have it set so I have a smaller deposit and then I get cash every like week to 2 weeks from the client so that I have cash flow coming in to support that job. Because I'll tell you right now, you're not going to hit hours on that $120,000 job the first time you do it. You're gonna mess something up
Yeah.
and have
And
to
so,
redo it.
and what I'm hearing from you though is do it.
So that's how I am. I would 100%.
I love it.
Our biggest so far was I think around a 500,000, and it freaked me out. But I was like, what the hell?
Let's
What are we
go.
gonna do? Not do it?
Let's go, baby.
Somebody else is gonna get this job. I want my name on it. Let's
Yeah.
do it. We have the people and the staff and the resources to do this. Let's talk to our vendors. Let's get some terms. Most of the vendors have experts in the different areas, whether it's irrigation or hardscaping, and they'll come give you knowledge too and help you out with this stuff. If you're not sure how to build it, they'll
Oh,
help
ask for help.
you.
Okay.
Yeah,
So talk about mentorship, asking for help. How has that helped you? I mean, even when you started this thing, your
yeah,
business partner was a quasi mentor, had an opportunity to take you under his wing. Now, I know you've got other mentors. Can you just speak to what that looks like, the power of having some folks around you that, kind of scaffolding to help
yeah.
you build?
I've never been afraid to ask for directions if I'm lost or ask for help, period. I'm not that prideful. I would rather get the project done and done right so I never have to redo it as opposed to fumble my way through it. And so I have found, through church and other places, a lot of my friends are handy folks and I can call upon them and say, hey, like I have one really good buddy who runs his own construction company, does interior remodels, and I can call him all the time and say, hey, how would you flash this deck to the house under the sliding glass door so that I don't get water penetration? And he'll tell me the products and things to use. And then YouTube is a tremendous resource. Same with Instagram. You can search different construction companies, and they often put up tips and other things. And it's from guys doing it on the daily, not just some textbook or
Right.
somebody that's telling you theory. It's, hey, this is what I have found to work, and it's worked for 20 years.
And then what about mentorship?
That has been a big one for me. When I took over, I reached out to a few people older than me and just said, I I see what you've built, whether it was the lumber yard or a hardscape company, and I would really like to understand a bit of some of the trials and things you went through to get there, so that hopefully I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I have really found that a lot of guys are, when you kind of come that way to them and build them up a little bit and sweet talk them, they're often, especially if I'm not trying to take valuable time away from them, if I'm willing to really adjust my schedule to fit theirs, or they call today and say I could meet you in half an hour, I try to drop what I'm doing to
Mhm.
fit into their schedule. Um, and oftentimes they're very willing to just tell me what they think on the subject or what they screwed up and what they think I shouldn't do moving forward.
Well, I mean, and it's really honest to sweet talk them because you're asking their opinion because you value what they've done, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not that kind of ask for a mentor is pretty natural to sweet talk because that's the nature of the reason of speaking with them. I think it's really important people get that. And when people are successful, they want to spend time with people that want to be successful. Like
Yes.
a lot of people, I think, forget that mentors like mentees. Like they actually enjoy it. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. I've also not been afraid to spend money um, and hire professionals. So there's a couple people in the industry, like Tony Bass comes to mind. He's in Georgia. I have worked with Jeffrey Scott. I've worked with a few others through the years, and they're expensive. there's there's just no way around it. We're not talking like a couple $100. But in doing that and hiring them, whether it was for a business corporate meeting or ongoing kind of mentorship and training or business coaching, it has been so life giving to me to do that and well worth the investment that I look back on. I think that's another thing. I've never been afraid to spend the money to make the money. I don't live, I'm not a fearful person. And so I don't kind of do a lot of the what ifs in my mind. I tend to make a decision and then I'm rolling. And my wife jokes with me all the time. She's like, things just work out for you. It's like, well, it's kind of what you make it there, right?
Yeah.
I tend to be positive and believe they are going to work out. And I'm also willing to work my butt off to make sure that happens.
Yeah, it's amazing how good luck seems to follow hard work.
Yes, yes. And
And
I don't think that's an accident.
yeah, I think you're right. And like, spend the money to make the money. I think sometimes also like you can, it's like making bets. Some bets pay off, some don't.
Yep.
And firing some bullets to see if something's going to work can go a long way because if it hits, it goes well. Like, uh, was it Warren Buffett said that 1 out of 10 investments went well. Um, he did
Pretty good
okay.
ratio.
He did okay, right?
Yeah, he's doing all right.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. I think it's not like we have ever made just these mountains of cash. There's been years that were super lean and we were just kind of grinding through it. But I always felt like there's the rainbow ahead, and if I just do this stuff now, it will pay off later. And I know we're over 10 years into it, but it's starting to feel like it's actually working that way for me now. And I had to kind of grind through the hard stuff to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm not all the way there, but I'm definitely on the right track at this point, and that feels really good.
Okay, so then, as we kind of come to the end of the interview here on this podcast, what would you say, like, if you think about business year to year as lessons learned, good outcomes, bad outcomes, we're incrementally adding to the business, we're making it stronger for the long term. Is there one or two things that kind of come off as like key decisions or key things that you brought into the business that made it successful over time?
For us, it's driven around our people, making good decisions on bringing new staff in. Um, so I already mentioned my brother works for with me. My best friend from childhood, Cameron, has worked at Father Nature since 2012. Another friend from high school works with us, and it's not to say all those have been successful, but we are really getting better at, if a bad apple has shown themselves to be that way, then they got to go. And we want high performers and people that are accountable and that are very team oriented to join us. And if you're kind of the lone wolf and you'll figure it out all on your own, that's not a good fit for us. And so hiring the right people, and honestly, not being afraid when you meet that person that blows your socks off. And in my head, there'll be times where I'm like, man, my crews are full, my inside staff is full, but I can't pass on this person. And I know my numbers pretty well at this point. I'm like, yeah, but if I bring them on, that's going to cut into the, we usually just make the decision to bring them on, and we'll figure out how we're going to pay for them and some of that as time goes on. And that has never bit me in the butt ever.
So then help some people like recruiting, getting staff, recruiting, finding the right people, huge
Yeah.
growth constraint from a lot of people's perspective, has been for
Yes.
years. It was intensified the last couple. We'll see if it maintains itself over the next couple of years. Regardless, though, a tip or trick, something that you're done in the recruiting that's helped you, find some good folks?
That's a good question. So we feel really blessed in that because I hear that all the time too. Like, there's just nobody out here. And um, it's not to brag, but it is a little, I guess, that we don't have that issue. Um, we typically have 1 to 2 people coming in every week to our front desk at our receptionist asking to fill out an application. But that didn't just happen. And so I've been intentional about recruiting for a long time. So I'm a part of our master builders and a couple other associations, and I go to meetings and I meet other contractors, and I go to events where you like can set up a table and put brochures out. And I go, there's some colleges in our area, and I attend those. I went to
And you
one.
go.
I do as the business owner. Yes, I
Yeah,
feel like because I'm the branch manager and the business owner, I feel like that's part of my responsibility
to find
is
epic
to
people.
try and find epic people and bring them into the fold. And so, like, I went to a one this spring at a, I forget what kind of college it's called, but it's like a trade school, and they were doing mock interviews. And so I got to go meet. It was like 20 young people, 19, 20, 21, all in the carpentry construction trade. And I was pretending to interview them. And so I was able to also give all of them my business card and say, hey, I'm always looking for great people, especially the ones I liked. And, because some of them I was like, there's
We're
nothing.
good.
You're all right, thank you. And then others were standouts. And so I gave them my card and just introduced myself a bit more before the next interviewee came in. And I like that stuff though. I don't love public speaking, but I force myself to do it when opportunities present themselves to try and get better. I really think I excel more on the 1-to-1, 1-to-2 type setting. And so I look for those opportunities. And because I've put the word out in my community, I get asked for that stuff.
It's awesome.
Not all the time, but it
But
comes my
enough.
way enough. And when it comes up, I clear my schedule and I go do it. And then shocking, now I have people knocking on the door pretty regularly looking for jobs. We also try really hard when employees leave, which we get a lot of that. People are chasing the dollar all the time.
Sure.
And so we try to, as best we can, make them feel special and celebrated on the way out. And like this week, I'm not kidding. I had 2 guys come back this week that begged for their jobs back. And they were great people. And so we had some discussions with them on what it was like when they left and what we need from them moving forward, but we brought them back.
Huge.
And so it's like the grass isn't always greener.
And sometimes they got to go see it,
They do. And we understand that.
which is cool, right? Instead of egos being burnt and bridges, going down in flames, you maintain those relationships and wish them all the best. And then who knows what comes back
That's
around.
it. That's
I,
it.
I just can't stress how important it is to just listen to what Chris said here in that, I swear 9 out of 10 landscape entrepreneurs, staff, can't find anybody. How many of them are going out there and talking to these kids, being at these events, um, being out in the community, engaging with young folks in contracting and trade. So,
It
and
might sound silly too, Rob, but like at a restaurant, I usually have business cards in my wallet. And I have left my card a few times for a fantastic server and asked them, like if they're talkative and chatting my wife and I up, ask them how they like their job. Sometimes they love it. Other times they're like, well, yeah, it's kind of a job. And that's when I'll leave a business card and say, hey, look my website up and give me a call if you're interested in a different opportunity.
epic. And hospitality server staff, especially in good organizations. Like we got the keg here. You ever been to one of
Yeah,
those?
yeah.
Yeah, like their training is epic.
Yep.
You grab and you can level them up, right? Like they're good at doing what they're doing. I think hospitality staff is a really cool fishing hole, and a lot of people don't necessarily consider that. So we'll keep it between us. I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's a podcast, so I guess everybody's gonna hear it.
Yeah. But I think lastly too, I would say we aren't afraid to hire from with outside of our industry. We don't have an incredibly robust training program. We're working to improve it, but I wouldn't be hesitant to bring someone in that's never swung a hammer or pushed a shovel around. But they're a wonderful person. They have great skill, like they can talk and you can jive with them and all that. We feel like we can train you how to do a landscape, but I can't always train you how to be a decent person and someone I want to spend time with.
You definitely can. And also, somebody asked me like, how do you motivate millennials?
Hmm.
And I was like, you don't. You find the motivated ones.
Yeah.
You can't motivate people. This is awesome, man. Okay, so wrap up one last one.
Okay.
If there was a resource, book, speaker, video, podcast, whatever that you would recommend someone to check out to help them grow their landscape business or business in general, or themselves as a leader,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Hold on, I'm gonna grab it.
All right, sweet.
All right. So I mentioned Tony Bass, and so he's not paying me for anything like this, but um, years ago, I read this book, Michael Gerber, The E-Myth.
So good.
And I remember driving around Tacoma and my like head, the purple blew out. And my head exploded when I read some of this stuff because I was
The
doing
E-Myth,
this. Yeah. And then Tony worked with Michael Gerber and wrote this one, The E-Myth Landscape Contractor.
epic.
And I read it as well. And obviously it's more specific to what I do, but those resources for me changed how I was looking at the business at the time. That's when I switched from having a job to feeling like I'm a business owner and I have a business that I want to build, that I could either sell someday or I could pass down or I could just like quietly retire from. And I told you, take a passive income from.
I love it. There's this quote we have at the talks we do, and it's Gerber, Michael Gerber. It says, "If your business depends on you, you don't own a business. You have a job, and it's the
Yep.
worst job in the world because you're working for a lunatic."
Yep. Amen.
You're the best, man. Thank you so much for doing this. And if you've made it this far, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this podcast with Chris Scheer from Father Nature. Thanks, man.
Rob, you're welcome. My pleasure.
The I Am Landscape Growth Podcast is brought to you by Intrigue, where passionate marketing meets predictable results for entrepreneurs. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcasts.